Avengers Infinity War. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, then I would suggest stop this video, go watch the movie. I don't know if you haven't seen the movie by now. It's been out for 3 weeks, about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. So go see the movie. Go see the movie before you watch this. I'm gonna spoil Avengers Infinity War. I'm gonna talk about all the things I loved about the movie, things I didn't like about the movie. But yeah, right off the top, it wasn't one of my top three Marvel movies of all time, but I really love the movie. I really love the movie. And after this, no one could complain about villains. First we had Killmonger in Black Panther. Now we've had Thanos. And I thought Thanos, played by Josh Brolin, he absolutely smashed it. The the character development of this character was so strong, and I felt it opened up really well. I love that line of dialogue he uses. He goes, "I know what it's like to lose, to feel so desperately that you're right, but to fail all the same." That was like the first line of dialogue that he used, and it kind of summed up his character because, unlike the comic books, I felt they gave him a lot more depth. Like, you see, he felt like he was a character who was looking for peace. I think the Russo bro. I was watching a interview with the Russo brothers, and they were saying they described him as like a holy warrior in a way. Like, he feels what he's doing is right, and even his cause is kind of noble. The only unnoble thing about it is wanting to obviously murder half of life in the universe, but he doesn't have any ego. There's no selfishness in him. He feels like he's doing it for the greater good. So yes, he has personal reasons because of what happened to his home planet, Titan, which was it wasn't like they never went into detail, but I don't think they needed to go into detail. You just know that the what he's doing is driven by his past and what happened to his people and his planet. He doesn't want to happen to the rest of the universe. So, like, this is a man or a Titan who's like driven by pain, past pain. And I got the feeling, especially later on in the film, and especially towards the end, like he was looking for peace. He just wanted peace, and his way of finding peace was bringing balance to the universe. And I thought that was really, really well flushed out by the Russo brothers, and it was a really good story point. And it just made his character archetype really interesting and complex, and just something that is different from your mustache twirling kind of villain. Um, and again, I wouldn't say I empathize with Thanos or I liked what he was doing, whatever, but I loved the character, and I love the way it was portrayed. And he was a warrior. He was someone who was determined to do what he was determined to do. Because even Gamora, she says, for the entire time I've known him, he's only had one goal, and that was to balance the universe by wiping out half of the universe. So you can see he's a man on a mission, and he achieved. Spoiler alert: he achieves his mission, gets all the Infinity Stones, and manages to wipe out half the life in the universe. We'll get into that in a bit, but just right off the top, like starting off with the Asgardian ship, I love the way it starts. It's really dark. The Marvel logo comes up. You don't hear the music. You just hear like someone's distress call, one of the Asgardians' distress call, and I thought that was really, like, you knew you were in for a movie. And then when you hear Ebony Maw, who Ebony Maw was brilliant. Like, out of all the Black Order members, he wasn't the one I was looking forward to the most, but they flushed him out the best. Like, just with his speeches. Hear me now. You have been chosen to be Thanos, children of Thanos, and your sacrifice will be you be glorious and all that. And it was beautiful. I thought the guy who played him did a very good job. Like, he was almost Thanos' hype man. But he was kind of like a semi kind of religious figure in the way, almost like a priest in the way he was like giving these sermons to people before they're about to be killed. And when he came to Earth as well, talking about how you've been chosen um, to be destroyed at the hands of the children of Thanos, this kind of thing. and that your meaningless lives are being brought to the cause, of balancing the universe. So your sacrifice, because that was the underlining kind of theme of the movie, was all about sacrifice. And you see the various characters such as Scarlet Witch, with Vision. And obviously Gamora and Peter Quill, or aka Star Lord, there were situations where they had to have moments of sacrifice, and you see them struggle with that. Obviously Thanos himself had the moment of sacrifice with Gamora, having to sacrifice her for the Soul Stone, which he was prepared to do, even though he loved her. And I saw some people saying, "Oh, he didn't really love her." I'm like, there's no way he could have got the Soul Stone if he didn't love her. It's not a fake thing. It has to be true. The thing's called the relic is called the Soul Stone. It can see into souls. It understands. It has a life in its own in terms of understanding souls. So there was no way that he could have sacrificed Gamora and not loved her. And obviously that was the first time you see him in tears as well. When I saw him in tears, I immediately thought of the scene in Black Panther with Killmonger, when he was in tears, when he was went to the ancestral plane and met his father. And it really humanized these characters because they're really strong, they're very linear, very masculine energy, very destructive, very determined to do what they're going to do. They have a mission, a task that both of those characters have been like waiting their entire life to do. And these movies with Panther and with Infinity War, both those characters were determined to achieve that goal, and they were actually at the brink of achieving that goal. In fact, they both did achieve that goal in both those respective movies. But you see the vulnerability in both those characters, which, even though they were portrayed very strong, very determined, very masculine, very destructive, very like just linear in their thinking and linear in their goal, their determination to achieve their goal, and very ruthless about it, they still had that vulnerability, and I think that's why people are connecting to these characters, because they're very human. Even though Thanos isn't the human character, it's still very human traits. He had a love for Gamora. And I also saw some people say, like, why would he love Gamora? Why did he choose Gamora when he went to a planet and he chose her out of all the people? Obviously, half of the people were killed and half weren't. But why did he choose her to take her on as his favorite daughter and all of this? But he says to her, he remember, he's a fighter, he's a warrior. He says to her, "This, what's your name? What's your name, child?" And she says, "Gamora." And he says, "You've got some fight in you, Gamora." So he could see qualities of himself because he's a fighter, and he could see some qualities in himself in her. So he just grew fondness from her from that moment. So you can use your imagination and fill in the gaps in the years of what he saw in her and he admired in her. Obviously you hear the stories between her and Nebula, Gamora and Nebula, about the fights that they had to have, and how every time Nebula lost a fight, she'd lose a part of her body and be replaced with machinery, to sort of keep up with Gamora, because Gamora had that determination. She had that kind of drive because of what happened to her homeland, the fact that Thanos took her from her homeland. So she had this kind of love-hate relationship with him. And you even see that when she seemingly kills Thanos in that reality distort scene, when Thanos had changed reality to make it look like he was interrogating the collector to find the reality gem, when he already had the reality gem, and they changed reality to make it look how he wanted it to look, just so he could see how Gamora really felt about him. And I thought that was a really good performance by Zoe Saldana, when she killed him and then she was crying. She was like that, she was happy but she was sad at the same time. And that conflict of emotions would happen in someone who was like a foster child, who had her home and her people killed, half of them killed, but this person had shown love to her and brought her up and made her this great warrior, even though obviously she hates him. At the same time, she would have love for him because he was someone who who loved her and took care of her and gave her these tools to be the warrior she is today. So I thought that was a really powerful scene. But going back to the opening, I love the fact that when Loki said, "We have a Hulk," Hulk comes in and starts smashing Thanos. And straight away that puts the audience in a certain position, because we never see the Hulk lose fights. We never see the Hulk lose fight. You could talk about Thor Ragnarok, but I don't think he lost that fight. I think it was an even fight. If it had carried, if that fight had carried on, I think maybe it would have been a draw, or I think Hulk would have won. Even though Thor is obviously really powerful, and you see a lot of that in this film. But what I really liked was the fact when again Ebony Maw was like, "Let him have his fun." He's like, "This is a moment you're gonna see Thanos really how powerful he is," and it wasn't just it wasn't the physical strength that I was impressed with, because obviously he's got the same kind of physical strength, if not greater than the Hulk, because he was able to pry out his hands off his neck. But it was the combat skills. You know, you could see Hulk's fighting. He relies purely on his super strength. You know, he's an invincible character. But Thanos has been through some stuff, and he's had to learn combat skills. And you could see the difference in the combat skills. It's like if you're an MMA, it's like he was fighting like a boxer or an MMA fighter. He was moving, he was countering everything the Hulk was doing, and just slammed him down. There was a knee. There was, you know, he threw him over his shoulder. It was really, I really like the sophistication in the combat, because one thing I've always said, if you've watched any of my stuff, it's all about character through action. Because a lot of people look at action and they think, or action movies, and they think, oh, it's just dumb. It's not. It's just a bunch of spectacle. But with fight scenes, particularly, especially martial art fight scenes, which obviously in movies, I count whenever you're seeing a fighting scene in the movie, there's a form of there's an art form of combat you're watching, even if it's not a martial art scene. But obviously this one was, in a way, because he was fighting very sophisticated. The character, the story should be told through the character, and I felt that that fight scene really showed who Thanos was. He showed he's someone who enjoys power. He's someone who enjoys domination. He's someone who has had a lot of experience, and obviously a lot more experience than the Hulk even. And I thought it was genius that the Hulk never came out for the rest of the movie, because that is like how a fighter would be. It's like, if you think about going back to, even if you any of you guys who watch the UFC, I'm sure many of you, whether you watch the UFC or not, you've heard of Ronda Rousey, famous female fighter who was undefeated for a long time. One of the pioneers of the sport. Now, when she lost, it was hard for her to come back, and she came back again and lost again. And now she's with the WWE, or the Wrestling Federation. I don't really watch wrestling, so she's with the wrestling kind of spectacle sport now. She's not in the UFC, and I think she dealt with the defeat quite hard, because when you're on top of the world and you're used to winning all the time, and then you lose, it's harder to then take the defeat than someone who's had a defeat before and come back, and they've built that muscle, they've built that resistance, you know? So for the Hulk to have been scared for the rest of the movie and not come out, and Banner having to fight with him and like, "Come out, we need you now," and he's like, "No," I thought that was genius. I thought that was great, you know. A bit deceptive, because in the marketing we see him in that battle scene in Wakanda with the troops, with all the Wakandan army and Captain America and Black Panther and Okoye and all them guys. You see them all running in that field, but that shot was never shown. So that was a bit of marketing deception there. But I thought it was great in the movie that they did that, you know. Also, I thought they gave Thor a really good story arc. I felt in the other two Avengers, I've never really liked the other two Avengers that much. I mean, I like them, but I think they're overrated, personally. I don't think they're that great. I enjoyed them, but when I saw the first one, I remember the reviews. Oh, it's amazing. And when I saw the film, I was just kind of like, yeah, it's good, but it never blew me away. But one of the things I didn't like is I didn't feel like Thor got enough. He never got enough, like, of a moment in the movies. Like, you see, even Black Widow gets more moments than Thor. I mean, Thor's the god of thunder, the Norse god of thunder. Come on, people. Like, I thought they did him his due in this movie though. Like he really had the second. Like other than Thanos, he had the most screen time. Like his story arc was threaded throughout the movie, beginning, middle, and end. He had the hero's journey, you know, having to come back. Obviously, you see Asgard. Half of Asgard was destroyed on that ship. He lost Heimdall, who is his best friend. He lost Loki, his brother. He's obviously lost, you know, his father. He's lost his Hela. Well, we don't obviously Hela was an enemy, but you know, he's still his sister. We don't know that she's completely gone, but again, he lost her. He lost his mum. His mum died in Thor: The Dark World. You know, lost his relationship with Jane. So he's like a man who's lost everything. You know, and there's that scene with him and Rocket on the ship, and Rocket's there having a heart to heart with him, and he was just kind of like, well, you know, I'm going to kill Thanos, and Rocket's like, well, he's the best there is, and he's like, well, little, you know, I've lost everything. What else have I got to lose? You know, he's never fought me twice. You know, and I thought that was a really good story arc. Seeing how Stormbreaker was forged, Neverdelia with the Dying Star. I thought that was a really good scene. Peter Dinklage as the dwarf weapons maker. So you see the place where Mjolnir was forged. You know, um, and I thought I thought the whole thing with Groot, because Groot was useless throughout the whole movie. He wasn't like the Groots of the past movies, like Baby Groot and obviously the Groot from Guardians 1, where he was a useful character in the movie. He was just playing this video game the whole time. He was just like a annoying teenager the whole time. So you knew he had to have his moment. And I thought that was a special moment, obviously, when he sacrificed, again, another theme of sacrifice, where he sacrifices his arm to make the handle of Stormbreaker. And I see some people saying, oh, does that mean he's worthy now? And I completely think it does, because if he gave part of himself to make that weapon for Thor, I would agree. I would think that that makes him worthy, you know. And up until that point, he did nothing in the movie but play his video games, which I thought that was. You knew that something big. Groot had to do something big, because he was pretty useless throughout the film until he did that. But that was great. That was a great moment. But yeah, the strongest thing, like I said, about the movie was Thanos's through line, Thanos's story arc, and I thought that was just told so well by the Russo brothers. Like the Russo brothers, along with Ryan Coogler, I think are the two best directors that have been in the MCU, and there've been some great filmmakers in the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But for me, those two, they're the best. They're the best. You know, I've loved like Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Captain America: Civil War. Those are my two. I think those are the two best movies, and then Black Panther. Black Panther is my favorite because, you know, it holds a special place in my heart. I've been waiting for that movie for a long time, and it meant a lot to myself, culturally, and just in terms of the film itself and the character. I've been a big fan of that character for a long time. So to finally see him on the big screen, it meant a lot. But I loved Civil War, and I think Civil War and Winter Soldier were slightly better films. But again, all three of those movies are top movies anyway, in a roster of top movies that the MCU have done. The only two movies I didn't really like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe were Iron Man 3 and Guardians 2. But the rest of them I've liked, including one that people don't like, Thor: The Dark World. But I thought Thor: The Dark World was alright, and I thought it was amazing, but I still enjoy it. I enjoy it better than the other two movies I mentioned. So, but anyway, point aside, I think the Russo brothers did a great job of, again, balancing, ironic, balancing the universe, but balancing all these stories together, all these characters together. There were some incidences where I felt some characters were underused. Going to Black Panther, he was one. I mean, when they arrive in Wakanda and everything else, that's cool. When they're leading the troops into battle, and T'Challa was at the front leading the troops into battle, you know, with the Mbambe kind of chant and everything else, I thought that was great. Him and and Black Panther and Captain America both running ahead of everybody. I thought that was great. I had goosebumps watching that because they're my two favorite characters in the Marvel universe, and to see them running towards towards those outriders ahead of everybody else. One, it showed their leadership. You know, they're not managers. They're not just people in positions. That's what leadership is. The people who go first, they lead by example. And I thought, obviously they're both super powered, so they're more super powered than everyone else in the army on the battlefield. But it's still to see them go, you know, head to head, run right ahead of everybody else was great. And it was kind of a throwback to Civil War when you see them running in that chase scene, where Cap and Bucky and Panther are running ahead of cars, and you see their super speed. Kind of, it's a kind of a bit of a throwback to that, I felt. But going to the negatives, he had not one moment. Not one moment. In fact, tell a lie. There was one moment where, and you'll blink and you'll miss this. Blink and you'll miss this because it's literally cut so short that you don't see the scene. There's a scene where Pampa leaps and he's used his kinetic energy power to knock out Carl Obsidian, the big monster guy, in the middle of the battle. But it lasts for like a split second. They don't hold it. I'm like, Black Widow had a moment. Okoye had a moment. Scarlet Witch had a moment. Obviously, Thor had his big moment. Cap had a few moments, even though he was underplayed as well. He still had his moments. You know, he had a few moments in the movie, including in Wakanda. But yet, the King of Wakanda, the Black Panther, had no shining moments. And the one thing he did do that was pretty cool, they cut in like 2 seconds that you can't even notice it. I noticed. I've spoken to some people who didn't even remember that scene. You know, they remember the rocket and Thor and Groot arriving in Wakanda. Bring me Thanos! I remember that. They remember Cap when he first arrives and he grabs the spear from Proxima Midnight. They remember Scarlet Witch when she comes to the battlefield and she destroys the Outriders, and then Okoye says, "Why was she up there the whole time?" Which was a hilarious line because it's so true. You know, they remember all those moments, but there's not one moment for Panther in Wakanda, and I was really disappointed with that. You know, I felt because even in the trailers they showed some cool clips of him fighting Outriders, but they didn't include that in the movie. I'm like, how can you have a huge battle scene in Wakanda and not have T'Challa, the Black Panther, the hero, the king of that land, not have any moments? Like, for me, that was very disappointing. And considering how well the Russo brothers portrayed T'Challa in Civil War, I thought it was such a great entrance. They did him complete justice in that. I felt he was a little underplayed in that in this movie. But that aside, again, I felt Captain America was underused. Again, being one of the OG Avengers, and again, one of my favorites. Him and Panther are my two favorite characters. I would like to have seen a bit more of him. I like the way he was portrayed, though. He was very stoic. I mean, he's a stoic character anyway, but he was more quiet. He wasn't talking as much. I feel like he said enough. He felt like he was in a different. He feels like he's in a different place in his life right now, where he's not. He's had enough of authorities. He doesn't really know who to cut. He's on his own. He's following his own intuition now. You know, he's that nomad. You know, and that was really cool to see. I like the way he was portrayed, but it would have been nice for him to have a bit more screen time. But he did have some moments, so that was cool. Iron Man. Iron Man had some good moments. It was good to see him with that bleeding edge armor. When that bleeding edge armor came on, I was like, what? They watched the Black Panther like, hey man, we need to up Iron Man up. You know, he always gets upgraded. His suit always gets upgraded. His technology always becomes more badass. But that was just like the way the bleeding edge armor just came on, and he like just took on Carl Obsidian. You know, that was really epic. You know, you was on to see the new gadgets he's got when those things came out, and he blasted Carl Obsidian. I was like, oh yes. You know, and I felt it was a great performance by Robert Downey Jr., the OG of the MCU. I was rewatching Iron Man the other day actually, and I forgot how good that movie is. It's even today it still stands up. It's like 10 years old, that movie, but it still holds up today. It's crazy when you see like the flip phones and the old technology in that movie, but it still holds up today. And I like the evolution of Tony Stark, because he started off as this cocky kind of genius, billionaire, playboy philanthropist, as he said in Avengers 1, to becoming this kind of, he's almost, I feel like he's doing a, he's done a kind of twist with ideologies him and Cap have, like, because obviously he was all about being a rebel, and then as time went on and he saw he was affected by New York, the attack on New York, and then obviously finding out, you know, things like the Sokovian Accords, the fact that he was responsible for Ultron, and then the boy who got killed, and his mother made him feel guilty about that. Um, and then him feeling that he needs to be put under check, you know, versus Cap, who was, you know, the soldier, the all American, you know, the you know, Boy Scout kind of do what's right. You know, he's always been do what's right, but more following orders, to realizing, actually, you know, can I even trust the people I'm working with, because they've got the world isn't as black and white as it was when he was fighting in World War II. Like, these are the Nazis, they're the bad, you know, we're trying to stop it, we're the good. It's more like, oh, the people we're working for, Shield, you know, they've developed these helicarriers trying to prevent crimes before they actually happen. So it's more of a grey area, you know, but Cap doesn't really fit into that, because, you know, he's more of a, you know, he's just a good man, purely unselfish good man, and he doesn't really feel like punishment should be dished out before the crime. So seeing that Shield was operating that way caused a bit of conflict with him, and then finding out obviously Shield was part of Hydra, and then to becoming like this nomad character, you know, after the events of Civil War, you know, with that whole element of control, and, you know, not being able to, like he said, what if they take us to a place we don't want to be, or we want to be somewhere and they don't let us, you know, we it's that whole thing of freedom, you know, which I totally agree with, you know. I was always Team Cap in that film, always, you know, not only because he's my favorite character, but I just agree with that ideology, you know. But yeah, going back to Iron Man, I like the evolution of him. You know, he's become a more stoic character himself, you know, and he's, since obviously see the events of the first Avengers has affected him so badly. You saw it in Iron Man 3, and that's one thing I think Iron Man 3 did well, was show that kind of post-traumatic stress that Tony Stark suffered, and how that actually affected him, you know. So I don't know. I think I really enjoyed how he was portrayed in this movie. I felt like you could see he's going through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. He's trying to prevent things from happening. You know, like when he was talking to Pepper, and, you know, oh, are they gonna, you know, thinking, oh, they're pregnant, and the fact that he had the bleeding edge armor just in case, you know, just in case something happened, which obviously, you know, good thing he was thinking ahead, because some, you know, the invasion did happen. But I really liked his arc, you know, and he's ready to sacrifice himself for the greater good. And he even told Doctor Strange that on the ship, you know, let's take the fight to him, because we saw what they did. We saw what they did before when they invaded Earth. Now let's, instead of going back, let's go to him. Let's go to Titan. Let's not turn the ship around, you know. So that was really good. One thing I want to say, a lot of people talk about how Cap and Iron Man, the reuniting the two. Obviously, these two characters are like probably the two archetype characters in the MCU, but they talk about them like they're friends. They were never friends. If you look at they were colleagues, you know what I mean? That they're working on the same team, soldiers on the same team, but they were never friends. People talk about them that they were friends. Like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers were always arguing. You look at the first Avengers, like they were arguing on the ship. Look at even the second Avengers when Cap and Iron Man were at Hawkeye's home and they were like chopping wood and they had the argument there about you could see the tension and the ideology clash that they had, you know. They were never friends. They always had this kind of conflict. Civil War just brought it out even more with the whole Bucky thing, you know, Bucky killing his family. So and obviously Steve being Bucky's best friend and knowing that he was brainwashed, he was influenced, but obviously that's not gonna be anything to Iron Man. You know, that's an emotional situation. But people keep saying that, oh, you know, we want them to be reunited and hug again. I was like, they were never friends. You know, like I think people are losing. And this is one thing I've been disappointed with in terms of these movies. Like Rhodey, Rhodey is Iron Man's best friend. Rhodey, James Rhodes. But yeah, nobody talks about Rhodes. You know, Rhodes is becoming a kind of forgettable character, and I, you know, it's nothing to do with Don Cheadle. Because Don Cheadle's an amazing actor. Big fan of Don Cheadle. But I don't. I feel like Terrence Howard. Obviously, Terrence Howard couldn't continue because of the conflict they had with Marvel. But I feel like when you watch Iron Man 1 again, the chemistry between him and Downey Jr. is just great. And I felt like he was a stronger James Rhodes than Don Cheadle. I mean, you might agree, might disagree, but that's just my opinion. Now, even in Iron Man 2, I felt Don Cheadle did a great job and they portrayed Jon Favreau did a good job as well portraying that connection, that relationship with them. But how can you have Iron Man go to space, be, you know, a bunch of aliens come down, take him up to space. Rhodey doesn't say a thing about it. You know, he doesn't say a thing about it. I'm like, they're making even obviously Steve mentions Stark. I think he says to Ross when they go back to the compound, he says, "Oh, Earth's lost you've lost your best protector, so we're here to fight, you know. And if you get in our way, we'll fight you too." But what I noticed is that Rhodey didn't say a word. Like they didn't have. There's no emotional connection between Rhodey and Stark. I'm finding. I feel like that's been getting more and more distant, and they're making more of a relationship between Stark and Spider-Man, which I think is good because it's like a mentor kind of student relationship, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Some people say, "Oh, Spider-Man should be a lot more powerful," but remember, he's a 16-year-old kid who only just got his powers 6 months before the events of Civil War. So oh yes, he has the power of, you know, the gods. He's Spider-Man. You know, he is the power of Spider-Man. But you know, for him, he's still wrestling with that idea that Uncle Ben left him about with great power comes great responsibility. You know, he's still wrestling with that. He's still looking for a father figure. You know, so I love the fact that they do have that kind of mentor relationship. They have made Iron Man kind of his mentor, you know, and had him build the suit and the Spider-Man suit, and obviously the Iron Spider. Some people have heard had problems with that. I'm like, why? I don't understand. I think it would make sense that he would have this billionaire guy who's been a superhero for the last 10 years help him out, you know, to mentor him as a superhero, even though he's a lot more powerful than Stark, you know. But he needs to know how to kind of guide that power, you know. And I think the films are doing a great job of showing that relationship. But like I said, Rhodey is his best friend, but they don't delve into that, and that's another thing I'm disappointed with. But it's not just with this film. I think it's just with the thread that the relationships are going. I feel like there needs to be a bit more less establishment on Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, and more on certain characters who are really connected. Like obviously with Captain America, his friends are Falcon and Bucky. Bucky is his best friend. Do you know what I mean? He's the one he has the emotional connection with, and that's another thing I felt that makes Winter Soldier such a great film. It's that again, it's that conflict of, oh, this was my best friend. Now he's a brainwashed guy, and I have this conflict of interest because we're loyal to each other until the end of the line, no matter what. Even though you've done some bad things, it wasn't you, you know, and he stands by him no matter what. I love that kind of dynamic between, you know, real friends. And Tony Stark and Steve Rogers just don't have that. You know, they're not friends, they were colleagues. And yeah, they are the kind of two leaders of the Avengers. So for them to be splits the Avengers up. And I get that. But I think people are playing too much into it as if they're like, they were buddies, they were best mates. They've never been best mates. You know, like Tony Stark's best mate is Rhodey. Steve Rogers' best mate is Bucky. And then Falcon. And then even with Stark, it's then Spider-Man, you know, it's and Bruce Banner. So, yeah, but that's just my gripe about that. What else was there? You know, another thing, Peter Quill, that moment where they were trying to take off the glove on Titan. That was a great battle scene, by the way. And I thought Doctor Strange just smashed it, man. Doctor Strange, when he said, you've come face to face with the master of the mystic arts. So he hasn't become the Sorcerer Supreme yet, but yet you still see his power, you know, and some of the things he was able to conjure up. Like when he had that moment with his arms, and he had all the arms come out, and then he split into like, you know, 20, 30 versions of himself. I thought that was great. But you know that scene with Peter Quill, Star-Lord, when they all had him, they all had Thanos, and they were about to take the glove off, and then he finds out Gamora was sacrificed for the Soul Stone. When Nebula tells him, oh, he went there for the Soul Stone, and he came back, and Gamora didn't. That was a very natural human reaction. Like, anyone else would have done the same thing. I think the only characters that might not have would maybe be Thor, maybe Black Panther, T'Challa, and maybe Steve Rogers. I think other than that, I think most of the characters would have reacted the same way. And like Doctor Strange said, when he went forward in time, when he was looking at the different outcomes, he looked at 14,200,000 whatever visions of the future. They only won one. So this is the situation I'm guessing where they won, you know. But we're just not seeing it yet because it'll probably be shown in the next movie. They lost this battle, but when they win the war, it actually, these things needed to happen. And I think even if they had gotten the glove off, I think Thanos is so powerful, he would have got the glove back. What were they going to do? You know, they're on his planet. Yes, they're all powerful, but it took all of them to even take him down. So I don't even think they would have been able to hold him back and keep the glove away from him. I think Thanos would have dealt with it. So I think people are getting a bit too thing about the whole Peter Quill thing. That didn't even bother me too much, you know. I thought it was quite a natural reaction. I thought it was a good scene, and I thought it made sense that he would react that way. You know, think about it. You found out someone you love was just killed by, you know, their father, stepfather, whatever, and you're in that situation. You would have probably reacted the same way. So don't give Star-Lord a hard time. But anyway, but yeah, what else? What else was there? Yeah, I felt they gave Vision and Scarlet Witch a good story arc because they haven't had like the best story arc in the MCU so far. You know, they're good characters. I particularly like Vision, but they gave him a bit of made him more human. Obviously, no pun intended. Even his appearance at the beginning, when you see him and Scarlet Witch, you see they're having a relationship now, which you did see kind of blossom even from the Avengers Age of Ultron, when he rescues her when Sokovia is about to be decimated. There's a moment where he flies in and grabs her, and then they kind of look at each other. It even started there, you know, and then you see it in Civil War now here. And it was good to see him in that human form. Born Paul Bettany be in the human form, and to see that kind of chemistry. That fight they had with the Black Order. The Black Order, it was it what's his name? There's Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. Corvus Glaive in the comics, he's supposed to be this master tactician of combat, and Proxima Midnight, that spear's supposed to be really powerful, something that you can't, like, mere mortals ain't going to be able to handle. Obviously they powered them down a little bit so they could fight the Avengers, but I still feel like they underpowered, especially Corvus Glaive. I felt like he's supposed to be a lot more of a powerful character. He was one of the Black Order I was looking forward to seeing more in this film, and to see like Black Widow able to take him on, I was like, really? Like, she would not be able to take, even Captain America wouldn't be able to take him on, because he's someone who goes to planets and he learns all their combat skills, he learns all their tactics, and he's able to adapt any fighting style, any military tactics of that country of that planet when he invades planets, and he goes to find tributes for Thanos. So they kind of powered him down a little bit. They also powered down Proxima Midnight, and I felt they were a little bit weak in the film, unfortunately. I mean, they were alright. They were good kind of cannon fodder, but I feel like they could have been developed a bit more. If I'm nitpicking, but even the fight they're able to have um, with Vision and Scarlet Witch, those are two powerful beings, and these two powerful beings having a fight with them and almost defeated them. So when I love Cap. We know Cap is, like, again, him and Panther are my two favorite characters. So when Cap arrives, and then Falcon and Black Widow to fight them, and then they're able to defeat them, it kind of undermines not only the power of those two Black Order members, but it undermines the power of Scarlet Witch and Vision a bit. That's what I felt. But again, they wanted to you kind of have to make the human characters a little bit more formidable for these superpowered characters. Otherwise, why are they there? But I feel like, especially Black Widow, a bit overpowered. That's in my opinion. I think she's a bit too overpowered in these movies, because she would have no chance against those guys. No chance. Falcon as well. I mean, he's got his wings, he's able to fly, he's got aerial combat skills, so he's got a little bit more of an edge than she does. And obviously Cap's is a super soldier, and he's got super character, so he's a different beast in itself. But even Cap would have a hard time fighting those guys. So Cap I can buy, but the other two being able to take on the Black Order, it took me out a little bit. But again, it was a nice little fight scene. So, and they brought that arc full circle when Vision ends up saving Cap actually in Wakanda, and killing Corvus Glaive with his own glaive. So that was cool. And going back to Bruce Banner, what I liked is that we got to see more of Bruce Banner, and we got to see that conflict with the Hulk. And I think they said that they're going to be doing this kind of overarching theme with the Hulk over the next 3 movies. So it started in Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, and it's going to end in Avengers 4. And it's this kind of conflict that Banner is having with the Hulk. With Thor Ragnarok, you see that the Hulk kind of takes over, and Banner's kind of the minor character. Now, Infinity War, Banner takes over, and Hulk is the minor character because of the ass kicking he got from Thanos. So I wonder how they're going to come full circle. I think he's probably going to come full circle and become like Red Hulk or something like that. You're going to see the Hulk at its full power potential, and Banner at its full power and potential in Avengers 4. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, because it's good. It's a really good story arc that they're doing with that character at the moment. I'm really enjoying that. But the ending, let's talk about the ending. Everyone was so blown away by the ending. There was a couple of surprises in the film. Red Skull turning up, obviously in Captain America, the First Avenger. The Tesseract, people were saying, is he dead? It was like, did you not see the Tesseract transported him to another dimension? But it was good that they kind of tied that off by him being on that planet. I forget what it was called. Nowhere, I believe that's what it's called. Was it Nowhere? I think it was Nowhere. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But for him being on Nowhere and being kind of the guardian of the Soul Stone, I thought that was interesting. So you see all this time he's been developing this ancient wisdom, and he's been he talking about how he was after an Infinity Stone once and held it in his hand. I thought that was really good. And even the actor who played him, I thought he did a great job of even portraying that same kind of aura that Hugo Weaving, who played Red Skull in the first Avenger, in Captain America the First Avenger, did. Because I almost thought it was Hugo Weaving who was playing him, but it was another actor. So that was really good. What was I saying? Yeah, the ending. Now, people were talking about deaths, all leading up to Avengers. That's all I kept hearing. Who's gonna die? Who's gonna die? Is it gonna be Cap? Is it gonna be Iron Man? I was like, I knew neither of those guys were gonna die. Like, because everyone thinks they're gonna die, they weren't gonna die. So it was kind of, in a way, it was kind of genius, but it kind of wasn't at the same time with the characters they killed. First off, you see Bucky die. That I could actually see that happening, because to give that bit of loss for Cap, him losing his best friend would have a real impact on Captain America, who, again, I knew was going to survive. But then when it came to, and then obviously in that battle scene when Stark is fighting Thanos, and then he stabs him, I remember like the cinema just went, there was a gasp in the cinema, just like when he got stabbed, because everyone was kind of waiting for Stark to die, and then obviously Doctor Strange sacrifices the time gem for Tony's life, because he saw it was the only way that they could win, was by doing that for some reason, which we'll find out obviously. But the characters that they killed, when they killed Black Panther, I was like, oh my god, like, because it was a bit of the way that the scene was blocked out. You see Okoye, you see him reach for Okoye, get up, General, this is no place to die, and then you see the dust start happening, and then you're thinking, is it her? And it's like, oh shoot, he died. You think, how can Black Panther die? He's just been introduced to the the Marvel universe. In no way, he was one of the people no one expected to die. So it was like, I was like, for a moment I was a bit shocked. I was like, no! Obviously Panther's my favourite character along with Cap, so I was like, oh no! And then you see like everybody else start fading away. You see like a lot of the Wakandan warriors, the Jabari. I noticed most of the Jabari were the ones to die, and I didn't see any Dora Milaje die. But anyway, I thought that was interesting, the way that he chose those people to die. But anyway, and then when you see on Titan and you see Mantis disappear, you see Star-Lord disappear, you see obviously Groot disappear in Wakanda, you see Drax disappear, and then you see the spider, Doctor Strange. There was no other way. Then he fades away, and then you see Spider-Man. That was a really good death, and that was very true to how Spider-Man, Peter Parker, 16-year-old teenager, 17-year-old, however old he is, would act. He doesn't want to die. He's a boy. He's gonna be begging for his life. It was very well acted by Tom Holland, who I think is doing a great job of portraying the essence of who Peter Parker is, I think, and who he would be at this point of his Spider-Man kind of, let's say, career. That's how he would be. He'd be scared, he'd be confused, he'd be excited, he'd be in awe of these superheroes who he probably grew up watching on TV before he even became Spider-Man. So for him to be dying in Tony's arms, I thought that was very very powerful. And then apologizing to Tony before he dies, and that was obviously going to have that's going to have a big impact on Tony Stark. Think about it, going back to Civil War, when the mother made Stark feel guilty about her son dying. I feel like he's almost trying to make up for that death by mentoring Peter Parker. You know, that's how I feel about it. I feel like that's kind of a good little character moment where he's using his power to help another young man instead of the consequences of the Avengers trying to help people and then they ended up killing a young man, or a young man ended up dying, not them killing him. It's just collateral damage. So that's gonna really hold, because he was always trying to keep Peter safe. You know, even when he told him to get the wizard, and then he ended up on the ship, and then he told Friday or the AR system to take him back, and then he ended up being on the ship, and he was so mad that he was on the ship. But then he kind of realized, oh no, I have to let this guy go. I have to let him become the man that he wants to be. You know, and he was like, oh, you're an Avenger now. And when he did that, there was a really good moment. I don't know if people notice this, where he goes, "You're an Avenger now," and then you see Peter smile like he's happy, and then you see like him get emotional, and it goes back to that whole thing that's just happened to him. Remember, just before Civil War, he said he's had these powers for 6 months. What happened to him 6 months ago before he had the power? He lost Uncle Ben. And they never really mention it, but it's always like there's you can see the underlying tone throughout the movies. If you watch Homecoming again, if you watch Civil War again, and then watch Infinity War, and look for those little undertone moments, there's little undertone moments. Like there was a moment where he was talking to Stark in his apartment when they first met in Civil War, and he's talking about, you know, when you can do good thing, when you have the powers I have and you do nothing and the bad things happen, they happen because of you. It's like a guilt he's holding over what happens with Uncle Ben. We all know the Uncle Ben story. If you haven't, there's 4 other Spider-Man movies that you can watch with 5 other movies, should I say, with Tony Maguire and Andrew Garfield that explain all that. So I'm not going to do it here, but you know that story arc. So just having that story arc kind of in the undercurrent, I feel was really good. You know, they're very subtle, so you'll miss it if you're not really intuitive enough to pick it up, or you don't understand, or you don't know the Spider-Man story, or if you're not paying attention, you'll miss those little subtle nuances that Tom Holland's putting in his performance, which is, I think, is really, really top notch, and why I think he's doing a great job as Spider-Man. So when he was like knighted him as the Avenger, you could see like he had a kind of emotional moment. First he was happy, then he almost cried, and he was like, then became a bit very like proud and kind of goosebumps. And you know, he was like, you know, like this, like I've made it. I'm now have that great power, that great responsibility, which I think he's been seeking all this time. And he's been trying to do it by becoming an Avenger, you know, in this story arc, and I think that's been great, you know, and obviously by trying to impress Tony Stark, who is like a replacement father figure from the Uncle Ben figure. So it's a great, really good underlining storytelling in this franchise, you know. Like I said, these interwoven stories, the serial storytelling that the Marvel Universe has done for the last 10 years is great. It's revolutionary, and that's the reason why it's the most profitable franchise at the moment, even ahead of Star Wars. You know, look on Wikipedia, you check out the highest grossing movies of all time, you'll see that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is number 1, Star Wars is number 2. And I think it's because people are embracing the serial storytelling, because it's like the best of movies and the best of television all in one. You're watching this massive television opera over the last 10 years in cinematic form, so it's really great. And I think form storytelling is going to be here to stay. Obviously you see other studios trying to emulate it, obviously the DC universe, which makes sense, but you also see Universal Studios trying to do a monster universe, which they kind of I think they were trying to go a bit too fast with that, because Marvel have taken their time and they've built these characters up. And remember, none of these characters were characters that we knew, apart from Spider-Man, Hulk, I didn't know anything about Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Black Panther. You know, I'd heard a little bit. I did know a little bit about, but I only knew a little bit about it like a couple years before the MCU. So, you know, I grew up with Batman was my favorite character. You know, Batman, Superman. You know, obviously Wonder Woman. Spider Man, Hulk, X Men, Wolverine. You know, these are characters that I knew before. I knew Daredevil as well because somebody introduced me to Daredevil because they knew I like martial arts and they're like, oh, check out this character. He's a martial arts character, and I really enjoyed that character from there, from the Frank Miller comics. But it's not these characters are not well known characters, and you know, Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, even when they were introduced, people were like, why? But remember, no one knew who Iron Man was before 2008 till Downey brought him to life, you know. And I think Downey does such a great job as Iron Man because he is Iron Man. It's kind of like the same way Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, you know. So they're almost playing themselves in the way that their characters, their sense of humor, you know, their characteristics. Um, but yeah, the ending. What I was gonna say, I thought those performances were very strong. I thought it was good that they killed off the characters you weren't expecting, which were a lot of the new Avengers, ironically, and the older Avengers. All of them survived. But one thing I thought was bad about that, now everyone's expecting them to come back because it's like, there's no way they're killing off Spider Man. He's got another movie coming. There's no way they're killing off Black Panther after that movie just made, you know, $1.3 billion at the box office and is like the ninth highest grossing movie of all time now. And they literally just introduced Black Panther to the universe. There's no way they're killing him. You know, there's no way they're killing the Guardians of the Galaxy X, Y, Z. So in a way, it was good because we weren't expecting it, but in a way, now we're just waiting for them to come back to life. So that is the that if they had killed like the characters that everyone was expecting, like Iron Man and Captain America, and then they came back, it would be more of a surprise because people were expecting them to die. Everyone was expecting them to die. So it was good and it wasn't good in a way, but you know, that's a nitpick. But yeah, I thought that scene as well where you see Thanos sitting down after he's achieved his goal and he just has that kind of look of satisfaction on his face. That was very powerful. Two reasons. There was a scene beforehand where he sees the vision with young Gamora and he was like, she was like, did you do it? And he was like, yeah. And she's like, what does it cost? And he said, everything. But when he said everything, he wasn't talking about all the people that died and destruction and the conflict that had been caused. He's talking about obviously having to sacrifice her life to achieve this goal because he didn't realize he'd have to do that. Because you see when obviously Red Skull tells him the Soul Stone demands a sacrifice of the person that you love the most, and he turns around and he's kind of like, no, you know, he didn't realize that was what he'd have to do. So it's that regret, but then it's also a look of peace in his face because he's like a man who's been looking for peace for so long, you know. He's been looking for peace because he's had that regret and that fear of what happened on Titan happening again. The fact that he had that opportunity or that proposed that thing about destroying half of the life of the universe because if there's too much life then it becomes unbalanced and the resources are finite and we will consume too much, so we must sacrifice half of the universe, but they didn't do that, and then whatever destruction happened. He's had that fear of that happening again on a universal stage. So his whole mission was to just he wants peace. He wanted to make sure he knows that doesn't happen again, and the only way is by wiping out half the universe. Once he achieved that, when you see him sitting down in that final scene, it's like it's almost like he can relax now. You know, he's achieved his mission. He's done good in his eyes for the people who the people who sacrificed had a noble sacrifice, and the people who are alive will have a prosperous life. So again, it's a weird conflict of interest because it is a noble idea in a way, but it's not because he's killing people. He's forcing his hand on other people, you know, by death and destruction. So you're trying to prevent death and destruction by causing death and destruction of half the people. So it's a bit, you know, contradictory, but at the same time, you understand a little bit of his twisted psychology, you know. But yeah, again, that's why I think he's probably one of the best villains that we've had in any movie or any comic book movie, anyway. And I'm including, and yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, the Joker, the Heath Ledger Joker, fantastic performance, love the Joker. Again, Batman, my favorite character growing up, and Heath Ledger smashed it. I love the Dark Knight, but I think he rivals even that, you know, because there was so many levels and layers to this character, and Josh Brolin portrayed him very well. And again, remember, this is a CG character, but they portrayed great emotional depth in the CG character, which, you know, apart from Caesar from the Planet of the Apes with Andy Serkis, I don't think it's been portrayed as well. You know, obviously Caesar's untouchable for me. I mean, I don't know if there'll ever be someone who plays a character as good as Caesar in a CG form, but I'm sure there will be. But he's number one for me. But Thanos is up there as well. Josh Brolin's portrayal of Thanos is up there. So yeah, and obviously the post credit scene we had. The Captain Marvel tease. If you don't know, that's Captain Marvel, the pager. I think it was interesting that both Maria Hill and Nick Fury both disappeared, because I wasn't expecting Nick Fury to disappear once I saw her disappear, and then you see like a random person disappear. He goes to reach for the pager, and then he's like, "Mother," you know, that Samuel L. Jackson line. And then before he can finish the line, he disappears, and you see the Captain Marvel thing. So looking forward to seeing that movie. They're kind of setting her up to be the savior, which is kind of interesting because we know nothing about this character. I mean, I know nothing about the character. I'm not a fan of the character. I don't know. I'm sure I will be once I see the movie, because the Marvel movies are just great. So yeah, Infinity War, while not being like in my top 3 Marvel movies, it's definitely a great movie. Enjoyed it a lot. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. 100% go see that movie if you haven't seen it already. If you haven't seen it, why are you watching this? But again, leave your thoughts down below. What did you make of the movie? Like, what did you enjoy the most about it? What did I miss out? Who's your favorite character? What was your favorite moment? I think my favorite moment was probably, like most people, when Thor came to Wakanda. That was crazy. And he's, "Give me Thanos!" Love that moment. So that was my favorite moment. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what your favorite moment is in the movie. If you like movies and martial arts, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notifications so you don't miss out on my new videos, my new reviews. Go movies every week, and I'll be reviewing a movie live from the cinema screen that I'm at afterwards. So you'll get my live, uncut, raw review, thoughts of the movie. So make sure you hit the subscribe button for that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time for another review. Peace!